Origin reaction. This is Will China Invade Taiwan Next by the channel RealLifeLore. This was the first video on my recommended feed, right, in the home page. So yeah, YouTube algorithm is, I guess, let's just say funnily weird. But yeah, with the recent event, with the Pelosi visit, it's becoming more and more like, okay, this might happen, even though I highly doubt it, right? They're not going to do that just based on that. But then again, what happened this year with the Ukraine, you can never know. So yeah, when the Ukraine conflict started, I said it like, yeah, this China and Taiwan thing, yeah, that feels like literally similar to this, right? And if anything, China and Taiwan feels like something that can happen with more, more easily than if Russia and Ukraine thing. And Russia and Ukraine thing already happened, so why not China and Taiwan thing with how CCP, yeah. Chinese Communist Party, with how they are saying throughout the years, right? I mean, they are really strong about this. Nobody can even acknowledge the existence of Taiwan. Otherwise, China just goes crazy, right? I mean, John Cena says something about Taiwan with the Fast and Furious promotion, and they are like, China just boycotted whole Fast and Furious thing. Until not just that, because of that, I think even WWE pulled his merchandise off the shop for a brief period. John Cena's merchandise. It's like everybody just blacklisted John Cena just because China didn't want it. I mean, that's some next level shit. And then he had to apologize in something, broken Chinese with whatever he was saying. But yeah. So let's watch this one. RealLifeLore is a great channel. I've never seen any channel that goes in this level of detail about the world events, ongoing world events. There are historical channels, there are science channels, but RealLifeLore is like a current ongoing thing type of channel. If there is something you need to know about today's world going today, RealLifeLore is a great channel. So let's watch it.
This video is made possible by CuriosityStream and Nebula. Watch another brand new full-length companion video to this one in my ongoing Modern Conflict series that explains the entire story of America's invasion of Iraq in 2003 and subsequent occupation, along with a dozen other exclusive episodes with more than 4 hours of combined content covering recent major international conflicts, all of which you can access by signing up for the CuriosityStream Nebula bundle deal for less than $15 a year at curiositystream.com/reallifelore. In February, the Russian armed forces initiated the largest-scale invasion seen in Europe since the Second World War, when nearly 200,000 of their troops invaded Ukraine. The event has understandably shocked the rest of the world, and has completely changed the way that our globalized society was operating before in countless ways.
Yeah.
But one of the places that has been the most shocked and alarmed by the sudden invasion is a faraway island halfway across the world in the Pacific. Taiwan. Of course, Taiwan's situation is, in many ways, highly similar to Ukraine. Both are smaller, de facto independent states directly next door to a culturally similar, but larger and much more powerful country that once historically ruled over their territory, and continues to consider them to be fully within its own sphere of influence.
It's different in a small way that with the Ukraine and Russia thing, sure, Russia can claim the Ukraine didn't existed before world wars or whatever, sure, but throughout the year they acknowledge Ukraine, right? China doesn't even acknowledge Taiwan, doesn't let anyone else acknowledge Taiwan. I mean, that's a bit extreme, right? I mean, I don't want to say, look, it's this is like a mathematical way of thinking. If this means this, then surely this means this. I mean, that's how it happens in mathematics, right? So if Russia can invade Ukraine, and if China's Taiwan situation is much worse than that, then surely China would... No, not really. You don't know that, anybody's extreme like Putin, right? You don't know if China's going to take that step. But still, it feels really probable that, yeah, this conflict... let's just say if something like this happens now, one conflict is already fucked up. 2 conflicts, that's going to be way too heavy for the world.
If not outright control. For centuries, the island of Taiwan was ruled by the Chinese Qing dynasty in Beijing, and the population became majority ethnically Han, as in the rest of China. Taiwan was then conquered by the Japanese in 1895 and ruled by them for half a century, until it was returned at the end of World War II. In the years immediately afterwards, China became engulfed in the final phase of the decades-long Chinese Civil War between the communists of Mao Zedong and the nationalists of Chiang Kai-shek. The Communists emerged victorious throughout the mainland and established the People's Republic of China, or PRC, in 1949, while the Nationalists of the Republic of China, or ROC, retreated to the island of Taiwan. And ever since then, the PRC and ROC have never officially signed any peace agreement, and the Chinese civil war between them is theoretically still ongoing. At the legal level, the ROC on Taiwan has continued officially claiming to be the sole government of all of China, including the mainland, which is ruled by the PRC.
Wait a minute. Okay, why would they do that? Look, look, anybody wants to be their own country. Their people claim that they're their own country. At certain level, I can understand that, right? That somebody who just says that we are a different country. We're not part of China. We are Taiwan. I understand that. But you still having stance like we are the official government of the entirety of China, including the mainland. I mean, like, at this point, do you really want to, increase the friction, right? Be your own country, right? Understandable. Claim that, understandable. But saying that I'm the sole government of the entire China, I mean, that's like a bit of provocation, isn't it?
But across the many decades and generations that have passed, has also discovered a new sense of independence and a separate Taiwanese identity, while blossoming into a highly developed, globalized, Western-oriented democracy. Meanwhile, the PRC on the mainland has also continuously claimed ever since that they are the sole government of China, and that Taiwan has always been a rightful part of that China. Today, the PRC effectively considers that Taiwan is merely a renegade province of their China currently in a state of rebellion. And that if diplomatic efforts fail to reunify the one China peacefully, Beijing has legally reserved itself the right to employ force. And China's current president Xi Jinping has made it no secret that that official position has, if anything, even further solidified under his administration, with statements like this one from a speech of his during 2021 that reads, "Resolving the Taiwan question and realizing China's complete reunification is a historic mission and an unshakable commitment of the Communist Party of China. Xi and the Chinese Communist Party are determined to one day bring Taiwan back under the control of Beijing by one way or another, and they will not change their minds. Since the war in Ukraine has..."
Yeah. So obviously this was going to happen. I mean, it's not that long ago where, Xi Jinping basically said that I'm the president for life or whatever that was. You could see where it was going from there. And I think, what is that doctrine of their Communist Party or whatever when it's founded? There's certain things that are written there. Taking Taiwan back is also part of that, if I remember correctly, right? So if that's the case, right, if your party's whole, your whole ideology, your whole party's core, followings or whatever you want to call it, right, like the rules to live by or whatever, if one of the thing is taking back Taiwan, I mean, yeah, this conflict feels inevitable, right? Yeah, this is just fucked up.
Proven that a full-scale invasion of one state by a neighbor continues to be possible even in 2022.
Yeah,
and since Beijing has never renounced the right to employ force against Taiwan, the world has been left wondering, could Taiwan actually become the target of the world's next biggest invasion? And could that end up sparking the next world war between China and the United States?
Yeah, look, with the Ukraine thing, entire world has shown that nobody's going to do shit, right? They're just going to send some equipment and that's it. We're going to stay out of it, right? So, yeah, China basically saw that. So, I guess because of that, they are going to be confident that even with this, and since they can just claim that Taiwan was rightfully ours to begin with, they can have excuse like that, right? They know that nobody's going to conflict with them. Especially with, I mean, China is not just some important economical country, right? It's one of the most important countries around the world. There's a reason why everybody just, gives in to China and does not say that Taiwan is an independent country. Basically, nobody does that. Why? Because they need Chinese, goods, Chinese money, whatever. So, yeah, at this level of advantage, right? And seeing how nobody did anything in the Ukraine, right? They're probably gonna think like, okay, yes, I know the USA, Japan, everybody's just saying that we are with Taiwan, but in the end, nobody's gonna do anything, right? At best, they'll send equipments or whatever, but nobody's gonna do anything. That's what their mentality is going to be going forward. And with the recent visit, I don't know what's with the visit from Pelosi, right? Why is she there? Especially time like this. I don't know what's the reasoning behind that visit, but it just feels weird right now. With the Ukraine conflict going on, why you provoking somebody else, right? If they're saying that there's going to be conflict if you come to Taiwan, I understand not backing down, but you also have to see let's not give excuse to people, right? Because if the visit somehow becomes an excuse for a big conflict, I mean, that's just fucked up at this point, right? I mean, when one conflict is already too much, what's happening with the Ukraine? Why are you trying to, destabilize anywhere else? Why are you trying to destabilize situations, right? Why create another conflict? I just don't understand that.
Taiwan's unofficial protector. The answers to those questions are complicated because while Taiwan's situation is in many ways very similar to Ukraine, it is also very different. For starters, Ukraine is directly connected by land to Russia along a border that stretches for 2,000 kilometers across mostly flat and empty, hard to defend countryside, and the Russian army has still struggled with invading it. Meanwhile, Taiwan is an island separated from China by the Taiwan Strait, a body of water that at its narrowest is still approximately 130 kilometers wide. A similar distance as Cuba is from the US state of Florida. Naturally, because of this, any invasion attempt of Taiwan by China would be dramatically more complicated and tougher to pull off than Russia's invasion of Ukraine.
I mean, it's China. Come on, in recent years, China's equipments, China's just resources, I mean, it's just going up more than people can track of it, right? I mean, right now, any report that says how powerful China's military and army is probably, I don't know, underestimating it, I guess, because just the way China grows. So it's not the same thing, right? Taiwan Strait, it's not going to be issue for China. Let's be honest, right? I mean, they've probably first attacked with the planes, right, just to weaken the defenses before they can literally invade the land.
Because it would necessitate the largest amphibious assault in human history, with hundreds of thousands of troops, landing craft, and air superiority all operating in tandem with each other over the strait. Second of all, Taiwan's political situation is dramatically different from Ukraine's as well. Taiwan is not a member of the United Nations, and only 15 mostly small countries officially recognize its sovereignty, like Haiti and Nicaragua. This is largely, once again, because the PRC considers Taiwan to be a rebellious province of theirs, and the PRC refuses all diplomatic relations with any country who sees things differently. Seeing as how the PRC is the world's second largest economy, with a population of more than 1.4 billion people, and Taiwan's population—
I'm sorry, I still can't get past the John Cena thing, right? Chinese, like, you know how to say things in Chinese, right? Then sing for me in Chinese, say sorry. That's just fucked up, man.
There's only 23.5 million. Most of the world, including the United States, publicly side with Beijing on this issue and do not recognize Taiwan's independence. But at the same time, the United States is a major unofficial ally of Taiwan. Taiwan is publicly considered a major non-NATO ally of America, along with Japan, South Korea, and the Philippines.
Come on, unofficial. There's no such thing as unofficial, right? Japan, USA, many countries around the world that nobody recognizes Taiwan as independent because they don't want Chinese goods to go away. Everybody's chicken shit to admit that, and China knows this, which is kind of fucked up. I mean, if you're thinking about how the conflict's gonna go, and the clear indication is like most of the world is chicken shit to even do anything about it. I mean, this just shows you like nobody's gonna say that Taiwan is independent. I mean, yeah, that's just fucked up. And people need to understand, like, it's not just about like China has lots of factory. Economically, it's powerful because it has lots of factory. It has way too many people, so it has way too many money, way too many factories. It's not just that. Which scientist was that who said it? Like, rare earth elements are not rare. It's just in China, right? So China is not just there are lots of resources China has too. The world needs, not just wants, needs. So China is a really unique position for the entire planet, basically for all countries. So major powers going against China and having conflict against China. I mean, with Russia, it's just like oil problem, gas problem, sure. But with China, world would face way too many problems if China suddenly decide that it has way too much money and it's just gonna create sanctions of its own. World's gonna face problem, all countries.
The United States has sold tens of billions of dollars worth of military weapons and hardware to Taiwan, including things like advanced fighter jets, helicopters, missiles, and submarines. American naval vessels routinely patrol the Taiwan Strait between Taiwan and the PRC at least once a month. And US President Joe Biden has even gone so far as to publicly state that America would defend Taiwan in the event of a PRC invasion just last October. America recognizes Taiwan as independent in all but name, and will most likely—
Yeah, but it was in last October when Ukraine thing didn't happen. What is he saying now? That's the question.
—come to the island's defense in the event of an invasion from China, unlike Ukraine. And the reason is because, simply put, Taiwan has become the most valuable and strategic island in the 21st century world to control. Okay. And it is at the epicenter of the brewing Cold War between America and China, the same way that Berlin and Germany was at the center of the last one. Whichever side controls Taiwan or has Taiwan on their side will quite literally win the entire 21st century. And there are many reasons why. Let's begin first with the geographic realities making up the board of East Asia and the Western Pacific, and start off from Beijing's perspective. The PRC controls the world's 10th longest coastline with more than 14,000 kilometers of shore with the Pacific Ocean, and half of China's 1.4 billion people live nearby to it. Many of the largest port cities in the world, like Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Ningbo, Shanghai, Qingdao, and Tianjin, lie directly on this coastline and connect China's heavily export-driven economy to the rest of the world's global supply chains. Yeah. However, access to the greater world ocean from this long shoreline is confined by thousands of islands, both large and small, stretching down from the Japanese archipelago, the Ryukyu Islands, Taiwan, the Philippines, and the islands of Borneo and Sumatra, which naturally separate the Yellow, East China, and South China Seas from the greater Pacific Ocean through a series of dozens of choke points zigzagging in between them. And unfortunately for Beijing, this entire island chain directly off their coastline and all the choke points in between are almost all entirely allied to or under the influence of their greatest geopolitical opponent, the United States. Every possible route that the Chinese Navy or Chinese merchant ships can take right now out into the greater Pacific leads directly through or near a major US allied controlled choke point.
Yes, but they're allied with USA, fine. But in practice, would any of them do anything else, right? Like, would they defy what China wants them to do? I highly doubt that, since they are way too close to China, and China's no joke, right? I mean, would they defy China, right? Doesn't matter if they're allied with USA or not. So in practice, in everyday activity, right? I mean, it doesn't matter who they're allied with. China can still get their way, right? Otherwise, China would just do something about it.
And it's very intentionally designed that way. Within American foreign policy, this strategy is well known as the first island chain, and it was initially developed back in the 1950s after the communists first took over the Chinese mainland. By maintaining close military alliances with Japan, South Korea, Taiwan, and the Philippines, all directly off of the Chinese coast, the United States can effectively control all of these choke points, contain the PRC Navy within her immediate territorial sea.
Yeah, so see, this just like, okay, let's say the massive conflict starts, right? Let's say China tries to invade or even starts invading Taiwan, and now USA point blank comes to the defense of Taiwan like with full force. I mean, this would be a hard fight for China, since all these islands, they have military resources from USA. They feed the resources, USA feeds resources to these people. So when actual invasion happens, obviously USA can use all this island as bases to attack from. I mean, that's like, yeah, that would give them massive strategic advantage. So I don't know, man. At first I just thought, like, if China tries to take over Taiwan, it would be really hard, even if USA gets gets involved. It would be really hard for Taiwan to defend back. But apparently that's not the case with this island chain or whatever, the first island chain.
While also simultaneously guaranteeing American power projection into the Far East from dozens of naval and air bases. And then there's the implicit threat that were there to ever be some kind of conflict, the American Navy and friends can easily blockade all of these choke points and strangle the Chinese economy into submission. From both Washington and Beijing's perspectives, Taiwan is the most vital piece on this board to control, because it is at the geographic center of the entire first island chain. If Beijing could ever seize control of Taiwan, it would eliminate a major US allied outpost nearby to China's major coastal population centers and trade routes. It would sever the US island alliance in half, break the American strategic encirclement of their coastline, and enable PRC naval forces, including nuclear-armed submarines, to finally enter the greater Pacific Ocean relatively undetected, which would dramatically improve Beijing's deterrence capabilities. Naturally, the United States would like to prevent this from happening, and thus...
Yeah, but at the same time, China is also creating lots of ports in lots of different... all the way to Africa, right? They're creating these ports. I mean, they're not officially military ports. There's some kind of alliance or whatever. It's in Sri Lanka, some in lots of Middle East places too, Pakistan, Africa. So they're creating, they're basically trying to dominate Indian Ocean. And the reasoning would also be that too, even if, they can't take Taiwan back and somehow this first island chain becomes an issue in war, they would control all these military bases in the entire Indian Ocean, which would be already, force element to it, right? Like, say USA can control this, but we have islands literally everywhere and we can attack from all fronts or something like that, which is kind of fucked up.
Taiwan is geographically a core interest to both parties. But this is really only the beginning of why Taiwan matters so much to both sides. Because the significantly larger and more pressing issue, as it nearly always is over economics, money, and resources. For starters, the Taiwanese economy is massive and punches well beyond its weight, which is another huge difference between itself and Ukraine. The Ukrainian GDP pre-war was only about $155 billion. While Taiwan's GDP is roughly 5 times larger at $786 billion, putting it on a par with Turkey despite having far less people. And the single most important thing to understand about Taiwan today that explains everything from their huge economy to their position as the world's most valuable island of the 21st century is that they absolutely dominate the entire advanced semiconductor and chip industry that powers nearly every advanced civilian and military technology around the world.
Yeah, you've seen a lots of like made in Taiwan and lots of electronic chips and shit. Yeah, so yeah, this doesn't surprise me.
From smartphones and computers to advanced jet fighters and missile defense systems, semiconductor chips of 10 nanometers or less in size are currently considered to be the most advanced. Tiny devices that pack billions of electronic components within just a few square millimeters of space. So thoroughly does Taiwan dominate this industry that 92% of the entire worldwide manufacturing of these advanced chips takes place on their island alone, within only a handful of enormously expensive, complicated, and highly specialized fabrication plants or fabs, most of which are owned by just a single company, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, or TSMC. TSMC is likely the most powerful corporation in the world that you've never heard of. And it's really more of an institution at this point than a company. They operate 10 major fabs on the island itself that act as the world's foundries for advanced chips. And ranked by market cap, TSMC is the 10th largest corporation in the world, with a valuation exceeding $540 billion, larger than the annual GDP of most of the world's countries. With such an absolute monopoly on the production of the world's most advanced chips that everybody needs, Taiwan...
Yeah, see, 90+%, that's a lot than I would have thought of. I mean, these chipsets are so important that it also seeps into the defense. Lots of satellites, right? Lots of defensive mechanism, This is kind of like heavy. So I am surprised by the 90+%. So Taiwan is really important. Like let's say, in invasion, Taiwan shuts down somehow with all the chipset and everything. That would be a colossal blow for the entire world. Because let's be honest, in the current age, you can live without everything, but you can't live without chips. Right? You need your chips with everything, basically, all technologies.
Taiwan has created for itself a decisive masterstroke in the art of defense. It has made itself invaluable to both Washington and Beijing. Giant American semiconductor companies like Intel, Nvidia, AMD, Apple, and dozens of others still perform the research, development, and design of their own chips, but beginning in the 1980s, they gradually outsourced the entire manufacturing process of these chips to mostly TSMC's fabs on Taiwan in order to cut down on costs and
You thought Nvidia graphic cards were costly right now. If this shit happens, you can forget it. Nobody's getting graphic cards then.
Become more competitive. Then, over the span of decades, TSMC has essentially become the global foundry and manufacturer for advanced chips designed by almost every semiconductor company in the world. And while this strategy was immensely beneficial and profitable to the private companies like Nvidia or Apple, it has also led to a massive and potentially catastrophic risk to the United States government. The overwhelming majority of the US military-industrial complex's most advanced chips that are powering their most advanced military weapon systems and technologies are pretty much all originating almost next door to America's principal geopolitical opponent of the 21st century. Were Taiwan to ever fall into the hands of Beijing, it would potentially also mean the conquest of TSMC and their priceless fabs, and America could suddenly find.
Look, the technology does not come from Taiwan, right? USA kind of, most of the technology was made in USA, right? I mean, it's just made in Taiwan. So yeah, it would be a blow to the supply chain. But I guess USA and obviously military, where the budget flows like a river, way too much money there in the defense sector. So yeah, they will find a way to still supply defense chipsets somewhere else, since they know the fucking technology, right?
Find itself entirely sealed off from the production of advanced chips, meaning that China would stand to gain the upper hand in advanced military technology like artificial intelligence and in nearly every other facet of modern warfare. At the same time, Beijing stands to lose a tremendous amount as well. Today, the PRC represents around 60% of the entire global demand for semiconductors, and the vast majority of these are either imported or manufactured locally by foreign suppliers. And despite all the animosity, Taiwan is one of Beijing's most crucial suppliers, since nearly half of Taiwan's exports to the PRC are entirely just semiconductors. Were the PRC to initiate an invasion of
they don't think that as an import-export thing. They're just like, yeah, bring that from our other state known as Taiwan. That's what they probably think. Like, China is making these semiconductors. I thought it was Taiwan. What'd you just say? Oh yeah, China makes it.
Taiwan, Beijing stands to potentially pull off a masterstroke by capturing the control of this entire crucial global industry and locking America and the West out from it, potentially securing Chinese technological and military superiority throughout the rest of the 21st century in the process.
Yeah,
but of course, an invasion could also dramatically backfire on these objectives as well. The priceless fabs themselves could easily become casualties of the fighting, or the Taiwanese may end up sabotaging them themselves out of spite if the war's outcome becomes dicey. And these fabs are not easy to...
Yeah, they will sabotage it just out of spite, let's be honest, right? They're not gonna let China take over 90% of this, industry.
Replicate despite everyone trying to, because they're ridiculously expensive and highly specialized. For their own part, Taiwan has closely guarded the technology of this crown jewel for decades, with many referring to the fabs as the island's silicon shield. TSMC has opened up some smaller scale fabs in China, the United States, and Japan, but none of these foreign plants abroad produce any of the more advanced chips under 10 nanometers. They only produce larger and outdated chips, while all of the smaller, advanced chip manufacturing continues to remain at home, closely guarded on Taiwan. And now, both Beijing and Washington are desperately attempting to remove their critical over-dependencies on Taiwanese chips. Having now recognized the tremendous historic error of outsourcing advanced chip fabrication to Taiwan, Washington is hoping to reverse the trend by bringing fabrication back home. Through careful diplomacy and economic incentives like the CHIPS Act, set to allocate $52 billion of government investments for US-based domestic chip.
Yeah, see, I knew it, right? I mean, the USA has the technology. They just, allowed Taiwan to be like, okay, Taiwan is, sending us, it's cheap, it's working. So that's how Taiwan became the big. Otherwise, the technology is with USA. I mean, anything chip, anything computer came from USA, right? That's how they become the dominant economy of the world in past few decades, right? So yeah, they would just, I guess eventually they would create another whole system. But yeah, if suddenly Taiwan, goes down, yeah, then the supply chain would be compromised. But I don't think military would be the issue. They'll find a way, I guess. They have enough money like that. But yeah, that's just fucked up. But one thing's for damn sure, because Taiwan has this like 90% of the chipset industry like that. That's enough excuse for someone like US to directly get involved, right? Because if the direct invasion of Taiwan starts, US would definitely get involved. They're not letting go of that thing, right? Eventually, like I said, they will find a way. But why would they do that when it's Taiwan is just there, right? So I guess they would get involved. But that would be fucked up. Let's be honest. Hold this shit starts, that would be really bad. China and Taiwan issue. Let's hope this doesn't happen anytime soon, because one conflict is too much. Two conflicts would be, I don't know, that could be the last straw in a way, because we can never know how butterfly effects work, right? I mean, just watching real life lore videos about Ukraine and even this time, it just shows you like how much layered things there are that we don't even see, and how much complication this kind of things create. So the two conflicts, I don't know. I think that would be that could be the last straw, and it could spark some kind of a global event. If not point blank world war, some kind of a global event wars. That would be problematic for decades to come, not just years. But yeah, you know what? This is 30-minute mark. I'll do the second part, I guess. But yeah, if you like my reaction, don't forget to subscribe so I know if I should continue doing something like this or not. Comment down, if I don't know, I got something wrong or whatever, or you want to comment about my reaction about anything, comment down, and yeah, I'll see you next time.